guys, and welcome back to my channel. Now in this video I'll be showing you how to make another version of a closed peony in my style. This is very similar to the original version that I've uploaded, and I will leave the link for that in the description box below if you've not seen that, so you can check it out. And as I mentioned, this is pretty similar, yet it's still different in the way the petals are positioned and dried. So let's begin. So the first thing you're going to need is some Squire's Kitchen florist paste, or the florist paste of your choice. I actually prefer Squire's Kitchen, and I've already pre-dyed it in a pale peach, just like so, and it's all ready to use. It's all been made pliable with some Trex, so be sure to add some Trex when you're making it pliable and you're colouring your icing. I have a 3cm foam ball over here. You'll need your peony veiner. You can also make the peony of your size, so you don't have to necessarily use a 3cm, but I find that this makes the most magnificent peony when all the petals are on there. And over here I've got two types of peony cutters here. I don't use the last two large sizes of that one, and I've picked up these two, and these also come in a set of 4, and these are the other two sizes. These are really huge petal cutters, so I don't use them, but instead I use the two small cutters from that set. And over here I've also got some silicone molds. We are not going to work with the apple tray today. Instead we are going to be using these silicone molds, and these are approximately 50 mm in size, and I've got 2 here. You'll need your ball tool, a 20 gauge green floral wire, your sugar glue, your brush, your cocktail stick, your rolling pin, your pasta machine, and you may or may not need some scissors. And I've also got my storage board here. So let's begin. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our icing, just a small amount. And then we're just gonna roll it out. And then pop it through our pasta machine. And you want to do it on the thinnest setting there is on your pasta machine. So get it down really nice and thin. And then we're going to cut out 2 of the smallest petals first, using our smallest petal cutter. And then we're going to cut out another 2. And then we're going to cut out 6 for our first row. And then another set. If you have some extra paste rolled out, then just go ahead and just cut out as many petals as you can, cut out in the next size up. And then roll your paste back up and put it back inside the bag. And then using your foam pad, I forgot to mention guys, you also need your foam pad. We'll prepare our bud next. So poke a hole right in the middle of the foam ball, right across to the side. And then this is a full 20 gauge wire, which I'm just going to use. I'm not going to bother cutting it in half because the weight of the flower is really heavy. So you want a really long stem so it's able to hold it. Bring it down across and then just twist that in place. And if you find that it's a bit loose there, just get some pliers and just tighten that a little bit more, just so it becomes really nice and secure. You'll also need something to hang your flower in, a block of polystyrene, as long as it's able to hold the flower in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get our 2 petals first, of the smallest ones. First, vein them. And then we're just gonna frill the edges, just like so. All the way around, just doing the back and forth movement. And then we'll get some of our glue. And then just coat the entire middle section of the petal. And then onto the foam ball, stick 1 petal on one side and then stick 1 on the other side, just overlapping it ever so slightly, just so you're covering the ball. And just try and make sure it's in the center. And you don't want to push down too much from the top, so you'll get something like this. And then we'll take the other 2 petals of exactly the same size, vein them, using a lot of pressure, and then just frill them using the exact same motion. And the beauty about this flower is you don't need to have it absolutely perfect. So if any section there is on the petals that doesn't seem to get filled, then just leave it at that. You don't have to have it perfect. And then cover the petal again. And I usually glue the petals away from the edges. So where I've filled, I don't glue those bits. And what I like to do is put 1 on the right hand side and then 1 on the other side, just so it covers the ball completely and it looks more natural when you're adding the other petals. And then just give them a little bit, a pinch on top so they're a little bit closer, but not too much so they're flat, but just a little bit so it looks like it's blooming, or it's about to bloom, just like so. And I like to keep going and doing the same thing for a few more rows. So very quickly, I'll vein them. And then again on the opposite sides. Just so it covers the previous petal. Just like so. And then I'll do 1 more row, just like this. And then again, just on the opposite sides. And you don't want to push the top bit down at this stage. just like so. And you'll be able to see that I've not touched the edges as such to press them down and make them flat. I want them to be lifted ever so slightly. And now we can move on to our row going across. Or you can continue going, applying the petals just like we've done. It will look really, really nice. So you can choose whichever method you prefer, really. So we'll need around just 6 petals and frill them again, just using the same technique. And then glue the middle bit as usual. And then this time you can just go around and add all the petals. So you want them at the same height roughly or slightly higher. And then you want to add your first petal and then just overlap that. And try and make sure they're all at the same height when applying these petals. Just like so. And then just keep overlapping. And then when you get to the final petal, just pull that back and pop that in, overlapping the previous petal. And then just pull that back and you should have something like this. You want to make sure the bottom bit of the petals are all secure to the foam bud. And it's highly, highly important that you leave this to dry now before adding your next layer, which will take at least 15-20 minutes to an hour depending on the weather conditions. But you really want to leave this to fully dry before adding the next layer. And if you want, you can go ahead and open the petals from the top if you want, or you can bring them a little bit closer and more scrunched up. That's entirely up to you. But yeah, go ahead and let this dry and then we'll come back and do the next layer. So now that it's completely dried, let's move on to our next row. So take another little piece, mix it up, and then roll it out, and then put it in your pasta machine and get it down to the thinnest setting again, using the second biggest cutter, and cut around 15 petals. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing with veining and frilling. Use the 7 first. Once you've done all 7, go ahead and frill as normal using the back and forth motion. You can also use this technique of the petals just to give them a variation. And I tend to do it like that. I do around 3 or 4 of one style, and then I do 3 in the other style, and then apply glue as normal to the inner section of the petal, away from the frills. And what you can do is apply one of each in between, so one frill and one using the other technique, and then one frill and then one using the other technique. And you want to apply it at roughly the same height or just slightly higher. And then overlap that by a half. Just making sure they are at the same height. And then again overlap by a half. Making sure the bottoms are really secure. Overlap by a half. Pull the first one back. And then pop the other two underneath. And I always have a damp cloth next to me and a dry one just so I can clean my hands if I ever get glue on it. And then last one goes underneath. Then you just pull that one back. Then you want to make sure the bottoms are completely secured, and then just close them in a little more from the top, just so there's not much of a gap in between at this stage. Take a look at it from the top, check if you're happy with it, and then leave that to fully dry, just like so. And then we'll move on to our next layer. And there we go, it's completely dried now. Time to move on to our next layer. And again, you just want to do the same thing with all 8 petals. Just vein and frill. And we will just begin doing exactly the same thing at the same height. And just press them down. Overlap that by a half. And then just keep going all the way around. Then you may tighten that up a little bit from the top or have them open however you want. And it should look like this once you've finished this row. And then we are going to pop these cutters to the side, and we're going to start with our 2 new cutters from the other set. But be sure to let this dry fully, and then we'll move on to the next row. But whilst we're waiting for that one to dry, what we're going to do is we're just going to cut out some of our other petals, because from this point onwards you'll need the silicone mold. And again, you just want to roll it out and pop it into your pasta machine on the thinnest setting. That's all we're using for this peony. We're just going to use a thinner setting all the way through, and just cut out 15 petals of each size. So once you've cut out all 30 of your petals, we're going to take the smaller size, and we're not going to use our ball tool, so you can pop your ball tool to one side, and we're just going to make the petals slightly bigger with our rolling pin and just thinning it out even more. Just getting it as thin as possible, and then we're going to vein it. The thinner the petal is, the easier it is to vein. So once veined, we're going to get our silicone mold, and we're just going to pop that right in there just as it is. And you don't want it perfectly straight. You're going to try and get a little bit of crease here and there just as you insert it into the mold, so it's not a perfect shape. Just like so. And we're going to go around and we're going to do that with all our petals. So I'm just going to show you one more time. Just using your rolling pin, go round and round. And as you do this motion, the petal will automatically keep moving in the circular motion as well. So you'll be able to get an even sort of a thinned petal. Going over the edges like once or twice. And then again, just vein that in there. And then back into the mold. It doesn't matter if it gets a little bit creased in the mold, but we're going to do that for all our 8 petals, or you can do that for both rows of this size petals, because the petals do take a longer time to dry in the silicone mold as opposed to the apple tray. So if you want, you can do both rows at the same time and then just leave them to dry. So guys, now that we've put our petals, our next 2 rows in our silicone mold, these do take a bit of time to dry in the silicone mold as opposed to the apple tray. So they will be in here for quite some time, around 15 to 30 minutes, depending on your weather conditions. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to apply them to our flower. So leave them in there and give them a little bit of time to dry, and then we'll come back shortly. So now that they've dried, we're going to get 7 of our petals from the very first tray we filled. And can you see how they've got that really nice cup shape? And we're going to start applying the glue to the left and right side of the petals up to about halfway. And you want to get the middle bit quite generously with the glue. So do that for all of them, like so. And then you can leave them a couple of minutes just for them to get a little bit more sticky. And then one by one, we're just going to start adding them slightly below the previous row. And we're only going to press down from the left and the right side of where we've applied the glue. So we're not going to touch that middle section at all. So just stick it down. And then move on to the next petal, overlapping by a half. And then just keep going, overlapping by a half. doesn't matter if the petals tear slightly as well. And then just bob that underneath. Again, making sure the bottom is stuck. Turn it upside down and just give it a nice firm press at the bottom. Just so to make sure they're all stuck. And then at this stage, you can by all means leave it upside down for a short while, just so the petals actually hold their shape and they're not about to fall off, or you can just have it upright if you want, if your petals are able to hold their shape and hold themselves upright. But that's how it should look once you've added this row. And now I'm just going to wait for this to dry, and then I will add the next row. And that's how it looks once it's completely dried. And now we can go ahead and add our next row. And again, we're just going to pick our petals up and just glue the bottom left and right sides of the petals. And then once we've glued them, we're going to pick our flower up. And where you've got a join of the previous row, you just want to glue it from the base. So push the left and right sides down. And we're going to add it a little bit below the previous row. Then overlap by a half. Just pull it back. And pop that one underneath. If you're having too much difficulty putting it underneath, just put it on top. It won't really make a difference when the full flower is complete. And then just give it a firm press at the bottom to make sure all the petals are nice and secure. And then at this stage, I'm just going to pop it upside down because the petals, as you can see, are falling off. So once we've added our second row of the smaller size petals, that's what it looks like. And at this stage, I'm not going to leave it drying completely because I want to add the final 2 rows before doing that, or at least the next row, just so I can maneuver them here and there if I need to change anything. But just look how fluffy and gorgeous that looks at this stage. So we're now going to go ahead and add the remaining 2 rows, for which we're going to do exactly the same thing. Now that they've had sufficient time to dry, we're going to start getting the petals one by one and just doing the bottom left and right of the petal as usual. When drying these petals, you don't want them to be fully dried. You want them to just retain their shape but still have that flexibility. And then we just pick up our flower, and then we're just going to go around and we're going to add our petals one by one on the join of the previous row and slightly below. By now you should be right at the bottom of the bud, covering it fully or almost fully. And then I'm going to add the next one, overlap it by a half. And remember, you just want to push the sides, you don't want to touch the middle section. And again, if it's easier for you to just turn it upside down and add the petals that way, then by all means do so. and see if you're happy with it. And at this stage, this is going to go upside down because, as you can tell, the petals are really flimsy and they're about to fall off. But I'm not going to put them in the oven for them to dry faster. I want them to dry naturally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang it upside down until they're able to hold their shape and hold themselves upright, and then I will turn it upright and just position them how I want to. So just leave it upside down for about half an hour to 45 minutes, and then once they're able to hold themselves, then you can hang it upright, and then we can add our last layer. So now that the petals have dried slightly, I've not had them fully dried because I want to be able to maneuver them once I've added the final row. So I'm going to quickly just pop this over here and get our final row ready. So again, what we want to do is put them on a join of the previous row. So I'm just going to turn them upside down and I'm just going to stick them in between the joins of the previous row, a little bit below the previous row as well. Once that's on, again, hang it upside down until the petals are able to hold themselves, or you can by all means just get a cup, and I've already put a hole in it with a cocktail stick, as I've done with my other Peony tutorial. If you haven't seen that, I'll pop the link in the description box below for you guys to check that out. And then all we're going to do is you can just sit here on top of the cup and just open the petals, and then just leave it to dry and set overnight. If you want them more open, just pull them back a little bit just to make it look more natural, and open any other layers of petals that you want to open if they've not completely dried. And that's the finished flower. So once again, we're going to leave this to completely dry now overnight, and then I'll show you what it looks like once it's fully dried. And there we have it, guys. Another variation of a peony in my style. Just look how many petals there is on there, and look how gorgeous that looks. Please do bear in mind that when you're making this flower, they do dry extremely brittle, so they're very fragile, so to handle very carefully, as you don't want any damages or any petal breakages to occur. But just look at that. It's gorgeous, isn't it? Let's just put that back now. So guys, on that note, this video comes to an end. I hope you find the video helpful. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you already haven't done so, and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our video uploads. And I'll be back next time with another new video very soon. Take care of yourselves, and bye for now.